Good morning, everyone. We will begin today's session. Distinguished delegates, welcome to the second part of the third working group session of the FMCP. To begin, I would like to acknowledge the presence of all participants, and in particular, the representatives of the 9 parties that will undergo the FMCP this morning: Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Canada, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Before we begin, we wish to make some introductory remarks on the general context and framing of our discussions during the FMCP session. In line with the UNFCCC Code of Conduct, we remind everyone to play a role in maintaining a respectful atmosphere. While differences of views are expected, I will intervene if I sense a compromise to someone's dignity or when the conversation takes an unconstructive turn or disrespectful tone. Please also remember that the Code of Conduct applies to all participants, both inside and outside the rooms. If you witness or experience any incidents, you can make a complaint to speak up at unfccc.int or a UNDSS security officer. Let me briefly outline the modalities for the working group sessions and highlight the housekeeping rules. Today, each party will be invited to deliver an introductory statement. The statements of the first 4 parties under FMCP will be delivered one after the other. We will then conduct a question and answers combined for these 4 parties. Then we will hear the introductory statements of the next 5 parties, followed again by a combined question and answer section. To request the floor, please raise your flag. I will give you the floor by referring to the party name. Please press the speaker button of your microphone and state which party or parties under the FMCP your question is directed to, and then lower your flag. I will take questions in blocks and then invite the relevant parties to respond in any order. Please indicate when you are ready. Please keep your intervention brief to allow broad participation. You are welcome to take the floor again later, time permitting, and further exchange is possible in the informal FMCP dialogues today and tomorrow at lunchtime. We kindly ask all participants to remain within the scope of the FMCP as outlined in the MPGs. Parties under the FMCP may indicate if they consider a question outside its scope and may choose to respond at their discretion. If a response is to be provided by a remotely connected expert, please announce them before inviting them to intervene. Once all parties have had the opportunity to respond, we will then proceed to the next round. When time is running short, I will call for a final list of parties wishing to raise questions. Those parties will be given the floor to raise their questions, but parties under the FMCP will be invited to provide written answers to these outstanding questions after the session. In addition, parties under the FMCP may also choose to provide written answers at any point during the session, for instance, where further information is needed. The Secretariat will upload those answers to the FMCP session webpage. The FMCP session will be broadcast live, and the recording will be made available on the FMCP webpage after the event. We will hear the parties' statements in the order outlined in the schedule on the FMCP webpage. I would now like to invite Indonesia to make an introductory statement. This statement will be delivered by Mr. Irawan Asad, Director for Climate Change Resource Mobilization. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for Indonesia to participate in this FMCP forum, in this XB. In line with the mandate adopted on the Conference of Parties through Decision 18 CMA1, Indonesia submit its first biannual transparency report on 24 December 2024. This submission marks an important milestone in our national transparency journey under the Enhanced Transparency Framework. Our first BTR was prepared in accordance with the agreed modalities, procedure, and guidelines. It consists of narrative reports supported by common reporting tables for our national greenhouse gas inventory, common tabular formats to track progress on the mitigation, adaptation, and support, as well as technical annex on RED+. In addition, we submit a standalone national inventory document which provides detailed information on Indonesian greenhouse gas emission. For Indonesia, the first BTR is more than a reporting obligation. It reflects our strong commitment to transparency, accuracy, and consistency, principles that are essential for the building trust and strengthening collective action, climate action. Through this report, we aim to clearly communicate our progress toward achieving the target set in our enhanced NDC. As this is our first submission, we also recognize that improvement is an ongoing process. Therefore, BTR1 includes plans to enhance data quality, coordination, and reporting accuracy in the future cycles. And allow me to briefly highlight some key findings. In terms of greenhouse gas inventory, Indonesia reported that the total emission is 1.382,854 kilotons of CO2 equivalents, representing an increase compared to year 2000. With the energy sectors remain the largest contributor. Despite this historical increase, Indonesia has made notable progress in achieving its emission reduction target over the past 3 years, from 2020 to 2022. Indonesia successfully achieved both its unconditional and conditional emission reduction target. This contrasts with the period of 2011 to 2029, when national emission across most sectors remain above the unconditional target level. We also note that emissions from the FOLU sectors or LULUCF sectors have played significant roles in offsetting achievement made in other sectors. The BTR1 also outlines Indonesian needs and experience related to finance, technology transfer, and capacity building support. Between 2021 and 2022, Indonesia received approximately $1.78 billion in international climate support. At the same time, as a part of our commitment to global solidarity, Indonesia provides $3.2 million in support to other developing countries. Looking ahead, we estimate that up to $285 billion will be required by 2030 to fully implement our mitigation target. Finally, our BTR sets out a clear plan of improvement to gradually reduce the use of flexibility in the future reporting. Furthermore, in accordance with Appendix Paragraph 150 in Decision 18 CME1, information submitted by each party, including the BTR report and the National Inventory report, will go through the technical expert review process. Indonesia their process has started since March 31, 2025, by conducting question and answer correspondence through the UNFCCC online platform, followed by implementation and centralized review weeks on May 5th to 9th, 2025. This report is the result of close collaboration among several ministries, institutions, and experts, coordinating by Ministry of Environment. It reflects Indonesia's strong commitment to transparent, accountable, and continuously improving climate reporting. We look forward to a constructive and facilitative exchange during this FMCP forum and to learning from the experience and insight from our colleagues. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Indonesia. I would now like to invite Malaysia to make an introductory statement. This statement will be delivered by Mr. Simon Anak David, Deputy Undersecretary of the Climate Change Division, Ministry of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability. Mr. David, you have the floor.
Thank you, Vice Chair. My fellow delegates, thank you for the interest and time in participating in this FMCP session. It is indeed my honor to provide a short insight on Malaysia climate change actions and our efforts under the Enhanced Transparency Framework. We submitted our BTR report in December 2024 and went through the in-country technical expert review in December last year. It has been a very steep learning curve to understand and apply new requirements and scopes of work under the BTR framework, plus the continuous capacity development to ensure future reporting effort can be further improved. Admittedly, due to the very short turnaround of a period before we restarted our work on the new BTR2 reporting cycle, we faced a very uphill struggle to apply all the improvement measures and proposed capacity buildings in preparing our technical teams and data providers for the upcoming reporting. While we appreciate the financial support made available under GEF, complexity of data gathering works at sectoral and sub-sectoral level, granularity of activity data required, and simplifications of analysis and process based on IPCC software remains area that require urgent and additional funding needs. To ensure continuity and recognizing the effort domestic working frame from the previous preparations of the NCs and the BUR are maintained and further strengthened in the existing institutional arrangement, which include national level committee structures all the way to dedicated sectoral working group. Under this structure, the National Steering Committees on Climate Change oversees the preparations of the BTR1, while the technical works are carried out by the technical committees and the Malaysia Greenhouse Gases Center, MAIS-GSG. Our structures also include dedicated technical working groups, the TWGs for inventories, mitigations, vulnerabilities and adaptations, finance, technologies, and capacity building. The stakeholder-driven arrangement ensure that data collections, analysis, and any issue pertaining to specific reports is coordinated and delivered by a specialized sub-working group, ensuring data integrities and technical accuracies. I would like to put on record my sincere thanks and appreciations to all of our relevant ministries, state governments, agencies and departments, national experts, GSG inventory compilers, the data providers, and all of our stakeholders, as well as the international agencies, in supporting and enabling the preparations of the submissions of the BTR1. In the words of the Gen Zs, this special shout-out is for all of you. To put the number into context, Malaysia total emission reported in 2021, which exclude the land use change, and forestry sectors, are estimated at 327.67 million tons of CO2 equivalent. The energy sectors remain primary source of emissions, accounting for 79.2% of the total GHG emissions. This is followed by IPPUs at 11.3%, waste at 7.2%, and agriculture sector contribute to 2.2% of the total emissions in that period. The importance of our LULUCF sector cannot be overstated, with removals recorded at 212.28 million tons of CO2 equivalent. It is significantly contribute toward our total net emissions at 115.39 million tons of CO2 equivalent. This data underscore the vital roles of our forest conservation effort play in our national mitigation strategy. The energy and IPPU sector experienced growth of GHG emissions. However, the emissions from agriculture and waste sector decreased, while the net emissions in LULUCF sector stabilized. Malaysia National Determined Contribution 2.0 stated that a commitment to reduce carbon intensity of 45% against GDP by 2030 relative to 2005 level. I am pleased to report that as of 2021, Malaysia has achieved a carbon intensity reduction of 37.12%, indicated that Malaysia is on the right path and clear trajectory to meet its 2030 obligations. To achieve our NDCs, Malaysia has implemented continuous, updated, and cross-cutting sectoral policies. In the energy sector, we are expanding the use of renewable energy and has committed to gradual phase of coal power plants. This is clearly reflected under our National Energy Transition Roadmap, NETR. I am also happy to report that Malaysia has submitted our third NDC in November 2025 as our continued and more ambitious commitments and goals toward the implementations and achievements of the goals of the Paris Agreement. NDC 3.0 aims for Malaysia greenhouse gas emissions to peak between 2029 and 2034, with aspirations to peak as early as 2029, provided that enabling conditions and supports are in place. This is a significant milestone for developing countries like us, that is still deeply intertwined with energy intensity sectors. Under the new NDCs, Malaysia commit to achieve an absolute emission reductions of 15 to 30 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent by 2035, relative to the peak level. This includes an unconditional reductions of up to 20 million tons, which we will deliver through our own national efforts, and the conditional reductions of additional 10 million tons, which depend on international support and partners in the form of finance, technology transfers, and capacity building. We have also recently launched our national carbon market policy, which will provide a framework for both voluntary and compliance market, positioning Malaysia as a credible participant in international carbon trading. To underpin this system, we are strengthening our carbon market framework and ecosystem, backed by data to ensure that every ton of carbon reduced and traded is backed by integrity and trust. We are also in the process of finalizing two bills, specifically the National Climate Change Bill and the National Climate Change Authority Bill, which will put in place legal framework to strengthen our climate actions and emission reduction efforts. These landmark legislations will enshrine accountabilities, transparencies, and ambitions into law, ensuring that our climate commitments are not only aspirational but enforceable. This year, our main priorities is preparations and submissions of our second BTR by December 2026. Moving ahead, we'll continue open and productive engagement with our stakeholders to ensure a collaborative approach for the critical works under the ETF. Improvement of our technicals and capacity building are of utmost importance to ensure that we'll be able to deliver and achieve all the national targets and commitments outlined under various climate-related policies and strategy. Finally, we'll endeavor to our best to answer any questions from our fellow delegates. And if you are unable to address it during the sessions, my delegates is more than happy to answer your queries after the sessions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Malaysia. I would now like to invite Singapore to make an introductory statement. The statement will be delivered by Mr. Joseph Teod, Chief Negotiator for Climate Change, Ministry of Sustainability and the Environment. Mr. Teod, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and it's a pleasure to be able to share some introductory remarks on Singapore's BTR alongside a number of friends from ASEAN. I hope that our presentations will show that the region is taking concrete actions to implement our obligations under the Paris Agreement and our reporting obligations. So, climate change is an existential threat for Singapore. As a low-lying island city-state, Singapore is vulnerable to the threat of rising sea levels, extreme rainfall patterns, and rising temperatures. At the same time, our small size and geographical constraints as a densely populated low-lying state make us alternative energy disadvantage. For countries like Singapore with limited options to deploy renewable energy at scale, our path to net zero will depend on technological breakthroughs and strengthen international cooperation. This is why we need to take into account different national circumstances of countries when shaping effective pathways for the net zero transition. To help countries to advance the transition, we need enablers such as regional energy grids. So again, very happy ASEAN countries are here and committed to this, and increase investments in low carbon technologies and solutions to improve their technical and commercial viability. The current geopolitical headwinds, however, pose significant challenges to global climate action and to Singapore's climate action in particular. Notwithstanding these challenges, Singapore is staying the course and continuing to contribute to global climate action in line with our obligations under the Paris Agreement. In 2025, we were among the first few countries to submit our 2035 NDC. We have committed to reduce our emission to a range target of 45 to 50 MT CO2e. Now, the lower end keeps us on a linear trajectory to our 2050 net zero goal. It is a range target as we recognize the fact that achieving our climate goal depends on continued technological advancement and effective international cooperation. Now, our commitment to stay the course is shown by our decision to increase our carbon price from $25 per ton to $45 per ton, or around US $35 per ton CO2 equivalent in 2026, as announced in 2022. So we had announced the increase, and we actually went through with this increase despite the difficult geopolitical and economic context. The increase in carbon price sends a strong signal for emitters to decarbonize and invest in low-carbon products and solutions. Our carbon tax revenue is also used to support investments in low-carbon technologies through grants to businesses that decide to front-load energy efficiency products. We are also expending every effort to decarbonize domestically. For instance, we have met our solar energy target of 2 gigawatt peak by 2030 in 2025, and announced earlier this year that we will increase this target to 3 gigawatt peak by 2030. So you can see, although we had set targets, we are prepared to adjust them as things evolve. Finally, we are advancing key cross-border mitigation measures like importing green energy. We are also advancing work towards a fully integrated ASEAN power grid. However, such efforts cannot be driven by Singapore alone and rely heavily on international cooperation. Now, pledges alone ring hollow without proper transparency and accountability, which are essential to maintain trust and confidence necessary for multilateral climate action. Singapore, therefore, supports the enhanced transparency framework under the Paris Agreement. It enables us to assess whether our collective efforts are sufficient to meet the Paris Agreement's temperature goals and identify where additional action is most urgently needed. Singapore would like to thank the UNFCCC Secretariat and the technical review team for their strong support during the technical expert review of our first BTR in May last year. The facilitative, non-intrusive, and non-punitive manner of this process, coupled with the country-specific assessment, has provided a conducive environment and useful resources for Singapore to continue improving the quality of our climate reports. We are currently working on our areas of improvements based on the feedback we receive as we prepare our second BTR. All in all, Singapore is committed, as I said earlier, to staying the course on climate action and supporting fellow parties in doing so. We look forward to continue learning from each other and strengthening the climate transparency and multilateralism together. So we thank you.
Thank you, Singapore. I would now like to invite Thailand to make an introductory statement. I invite Ms. Rarita Jongswood of the Department of Climate Change and Environment of Thailand to introduce the speaker for the introductory statement. Ms. Jongswood, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, distinguished colleagues. My name is Rarita Jongswood, representative from Thailand during this session. With your kind permission, I would like to hand over the floor to Mr. Pravit Gesawawong, Deputy Director General of Department of Climate Change and Environment Thailand, who is joining us remotely to deliver Thailand introductory remarks. Thank you.
Very good morning, Vice Chairs and distinguished colleagues. First of all, I'd like to express my apologies that we are not able to meet your colleagues at the meeting of the FMCP because some limitation. However, I would like to express my gratitude to the Secretariat for the ETF process that inviting us to make a presentation for the first BTRs. So it is very highly valued for this session as the catalyst for refining our reporting mechanism. The FMCP foster vital open dialogue regarding our climate action, achievement, and challenges. Furthermore, the expert review team's recommendation has been instrumental in enhancing our national GSG inventory, effectively bridging knowledge gaps and streamlining our preparation process. Thailand Profile submitted our first BTR in 2024, detailing its GSG inventory from 2000 to 2022. In strict adherence to the 2006 IPCC guidelines to ensure utmost transparency and participatory integrity. This preparatory phase involved extensive collaboration across relevant ministries and academic institutions. Crucially, with generous support of the Australian government, we successfully deployed Thailand greenhouse gas inventory system, we so-called TGIS. This robust national system underpinned the development of our BTR under the ETF, significantly evaluating our capacity for transparent, accurate, and highly effective reporting. Turning to our national target, Thailand has established ambitious climate goals led by our unwavering commitment to achieve net zero GSG emission by 2050. Additionally, we have formalized our intention to elevate our nationally determined contribution target up to 40%, contingent upon timely and adequate international support in the form of climate finance, technology transfers, and capacity building. Demonstrating our continued resolve, Thailand successfully submitted our NDC 3.0 to the UNFCCC in 2025. This update commitment significantly raised our ambition by establishing our absolute GSG emission reduction target across 5 key sectors, namely energy, transportation, IPPU, waste, agriculture, including LULUCF. This target is fully aligned with the IPCC 1.5 degrees Celsius pathway and the Paris Agreement overarching our goals. Unconditionally, our mitigation strategy will continue and expand upon the fundamentally NDC action plan on mitigation 2021 to 2030. Conditionally, given full international support across finance, technology, and capacity building, Thailand aims to reduce greenhouse gas emission by ambitious 60% compared to our 2019 baseline. Ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I must reiterate a critical message. As a developing nation, Thailand emphasizes the adequate, predictable, and sustained financial support remain the cornerstone of successful climate action and the realization of Paris Agreement. Let us reaffirm our chair's commitment to coordinate constructively across bilateral, multilateral, and regional partnerships. Together, we can accelerate global climate action and secure our utmost object. And we're pleased to have any question and suggestion from the floor. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Thailand. I would now like to open the floor for questions from the parties. I will collect a number of questions from parties before inviting the delegates from Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand to respond. As a reminder, kindly begin by indicating which party or parties your FMCP question is directed to. So we'll start by taking a few questions first. In this order, we have New Zealand, Japan, UK, EU, Ireland, Czechia, sorry, and Austria. New Zealand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations to all parties for submitting your first BTR and undergoing the FMC process. My question is for Singapore. Could Singapore share any challenges and successes it has experienced so far with the implementation of cooperative approaches, including under Article 6? Thank you.
Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Also, congratulations on the completion of your first ETF cycle. Japan has two questions. First one is for Malaysia. The institutional arrangement for GHG inventory preparation outlined in Malaysia's BTR1 clearly defines the roles of each entity and appear to be functioning efficiently. From BTR1, we understand that the technical working group discusses cross-sectoral issues and performs additional technical checks, while sectorial working groups are responsible for sector-specific matters. And we would like to ask that could you share your views on the benefits of this institutional arrangement, and we would also appreciate your feedback on any challenges related to this institutional arrangement. The second question is for Thailand. The TER addendum shows that there are many capacity building needs identified by the parties and by the TER in consultation with the parties during the technical expert reviews of its BTR1. How do you intend to utilize this information for future? Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations to all parties under FMCP today. I have two questions as well. My first one is for Indonesia. You reported that you have both provided and received finance, technology, and capacity building through the Indonesia International Development Cooperation Fund. Can you share some of the success stories from this fund? Additionally, my second question is for Thailand. It was interesting to read about your progress in implementing cooperative approaches. Can you please share your experience in preparing and submitting your initial report in preparation to using the carbon market mechanism by highlighting any successes and challenges? Thank you.
Thank you. EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, delegates, and congratulations to all parties undergoing the FMCP this morning. My question is actually to all parties. So could you please share with us how have your domestic legal and institutional frameworks contributed to shaping your MRV teams, systems, but also how they allow you to track progress towards the implementation of your NDC? Thank you.
Ireland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations to all parties on your BTR submissions. My question is for Thailand. So Thailand details several priority technologies for technology development and transfer within the energy sector, including renewables, carbon capture and storage, and hydrogen. Has Thailand carried out an assessment of the relative importance of these technologies to its long-term vision to reach net zero greenhouse gases by 2065? and what efforts are currently underway to deploy these technologies ahead of 2065? And also if Thailand could elaborate on whether it has carried out any further technology assessments beyond those that are listed for the energy sector. Thank you.
And then, Shazette, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Czech Republic would like to congratulate all the parties for their first PTR. We have a question for Indonesia. What measures Indonesia has taken to reduce forest degradation, please, especially in regarding the 4A category for the forest? Thank you. And well, maybe also for that one, that in the CTR summary table 10 for the trends, there was a significant drop of the forest sink. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take these first round of questions. Colleagues, I'll give you a few minutes, and if you could just let me know when you're ready to respond. Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you for the questions, delegates. Yeah, there are a number of questions directed to Indonesia. The first one is related from the United Kingdom, related to the success stories of the fund that we receive. One of the success stories that you would like to see is the finalization of this report. Because of funding that we receive, we develop capacity building, and finally, we can make or we can develop the report, BTR report, because this is our first BTR. This is our first BTR, and we can submit it by last year, 2024. So this is one of the success stories. There are a number of success stories that we can tell today, but I think it's going to be a very long discussion. But this is one of the success stories that we can show you based on the support that we receive. Thank you for the questions, and we hope you continue for the support then. Okay. Can I continue? Yeah. The second one is on the from the European Union on the legal institutional framework that contribute to developing NDCs. Yeah, in Indonesia there is an ministry direction on how the institutional framework for the transparency or for the greenhouse gas inventory report. It includes 15 different ministries and other agencies. And we are working together to develop our report, including and also working together with the universities. And that's based on the ministerial regulation. So that's our regulation, that's a framework for this. And in order to track our NDCs, we also have systems, a system we call it ScienceSmart, that we can track our national greenhouse gas inventory based on our that system, that application. Thank you. For the question from Czechoslovakia, if I'm not if I'm understood, what measures to reduce the forest degradation? For these questions, I would like to invite my colleagues from Indonesia that are already online. Maybe Ibu Mita or Prof. Rizal Dibur, could you please respond to these questions?
Okay, thank you, Pak. So we have a lot of experience in terms of how we can really successfully reduce the emission from deforestation as it is reflected in our inventory report, greenhouse gas inventory report. Actually, among of the sector, actually the land use and forestry show a significant decreasing trend in terms of the emission, even though there is a high interannual variability still there, especially due to the impacts of fire. So there are a number of effort that has been done so far, starting from the policy, regulation, also action that encourage all the parties to, the stakeholders on the ground to really address the issue of forest degradation. In terms of the fire, for example, the government also is already issued very strong regulation on on fire that actually many cases that has been brought into the courtroom that actually this actually put a kind of pressure also especially for the company who actually found a fire in their area, including also encouraging also the capacity building and also community support programs, especially through the social forestry, to provide more alternative livelihood for using the forest. In the context of forest degradation, there are also implementation of mandatory certification, for example, for the concession company to really engage in terms of implementing the sustainable silviculture practices, such as reduced impact logging and also enrichment planting that has been mandated for doing that, especially also with the issuance of the policy on volume net sink. So all the company also mandatory to input that in their plan, how they can really contribute and implement this program, especially on increasing the improvement the management of forest, including also the collaboration with the communities. So these are actually some of the initiatives that has been done, and also on the issue related to the peatland management. There is also strong program that has been done. As you may know, also Indonesia also have a strong program on implementing the 3R, we call it rewetting, revegetation, and revitalization. So the last one, revitalization, is that we focus more how actually we can really empower the community and village also to work together, how they can really manage the peatland on sustainable way by providing them a more alternative livelihood that can increase their income, at the same time also protecting their environment. So these are some of the issues, some of the stories that we can share. Of course, we have a lot of report that can be accessed and read, and that probably we can provide further information if you need. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Rizaldi. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Indonesia. Singapore, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and just wanted to thank everyone for their interest in the presentation. There were two questions posed to Singapore, one from New Zealand on Article 6 experience and the other from the EU on institutional arrangements. Maybe I'll start with the first, and just wanted to state up front that Singapore had indicated in our NDC that we plan to use it most to make up for residual emissions reductions required to meet our NDC target, after accounting for abatement from all policies and plans implemented. But beyond this, we see Article 6 as a mechanism that can help to channel finance and investments at a time where money is tight across different countries, as well as Article 6 can be a tool to raise ambition. That said, Singapore has been working with partner countries to enter into implementation agreements for Article 6. We have 11 such agreements currently. Just wanted to highlight that the implementation agreement is a legally binding agreement that commits both sides to do corresponding adjustments for any Article 6 projects. While we'll be making progress in implementation, so again, we have 11, as I mentioned, implementation agreements with countries. We haven't yet got a project off the ground. We hope to do so very, very soon. But it then highlights the challenges, which is where your question is concerned. And here we, maybe in interest of time, just highlight two challenges. The first is operationalization progress, as we have experienced, have been slower than expected. The reason is we established a multi-stage process for project applications under our implementation agreements. While this sets out clear steps and governance, this process also takes quite a rather lengthy time. Some of our partners have also faced capacity and resourcing constraints in managing the volumes of applications and engaging in the process. The second challenge is carbon project financing challenges. We have heard from ecosystem stakeholders that securing project financing remains difficult, particularly for projects with higher upfront capital requirements, such as nature-based solutions. This impedes project origination and scaling and risks constraining the supply of high-integrity credits. We are taking some steps to address these challenges. One is capacity and resourcing. We recently partnered with the World Bank Group to launch the Singapore Carbon Markets Program. Through this program, we will embark on activities to support host country capacity building, including national carbon market strategy development, MRV systems, most importantly, registry infrastructure. We are also working with the Global Green Growth Institute to provide technical assistance to partner countries to help them build institutional capacities. On financing, Singapore's Economic Development Board has introduced grants support to help de-risk early-stage carbon project development. Through this grant, we hope to lower barriers for project developers and improve the economics of high-integrity project origination in host countries. Maybe I'll stop there. We are happy to engage. I mean, New Zealand and Singapore, we are close partners, and we have bilateral consultations. We can discuss this further. On the question by the EU on institutional arrangements, maybe at this stage, I introduce my colleague sitting on the left of me. She's from our Prime Minister's office, and she is from what we call the National Climate Change Secretariat. So they play an important function because they support an inter-ministerial committee on climate change, headed by our Deputy Prime Minister. So based on our institutional structure and setup, we have a very senior political office holder overseeing and monitoring and keeping all of the various ministries in check in terms of meeting our targets. Underneath this inter-ministerial committee, which comprises more than, I mean, Indonesia mentioned, it's a whole of government effort. We have more than 10 ministries and agencies sitting on or participating as part of the IMCCC, as we call it. And under this committee, we have a specialized committee. Again, I introduce another of my colleague from the NEA to my right, and as well as my ministry. So my ministry, Ministry of Sustainability and Environment, and the Prime Minister Office co-chair what we call a MRV task force. And this MRV task force go into the nitty-gritties of how each agency is actually implementing their carbon budget trajectory and the progress. So on that, maybe the other useful tool, and here in the spirit of sharing, we also have a Carbon Pricing Act. And under the Carbon Pricing Act, it gives us a tool to also get information on emission reductions from businesses itself. So that gives us another measure of tracking how we are performing. So I think I leave that for now. Rest assured that for Singapore, small as we are, we have that process where we keep check, rigorous check on our NDC implementation and progress. Thanks.
Thank you, Singapore. Thailand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your of question. And I would like to pass the question from UK, Japan, EU, and Ireland to Mr. Pawit and my team via online. Thank you.
Vice Chairs, I'd like to firstly respond to the Japan that you just, thank you very much for your question. After the technical review, we are collecting some suggestions, and we are prioritizing the capacity building needs and along with the MPG's structures. And we have the support from GIZ to convene the capacity buildings to leverage any knowledge and understanding of the MPGs. For example, Thailand prioritized the needs such as the national GSG inventories, mitigation action in NDC, support need for conditional NDC, and action in adaptation. So our prioritize is very crucial that we need the stakeholder engagement for the capacity building on the BTR. The question from the UK for the preparation for the carbon market mechanism. So I think that in Thailand, we have not yet have the we have the voluntary market in Thailand. We have the significant progress in implementing the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, such as the Article 6.2. We have established the framework for authorizing cooperative approach, including NDC action plan that set a cap on ITMO to safeguard the achievement of the NDC target. And also Thailand has developed international carbon credit guideline to serve as the basis of assessing and approving projects in line with the principle of the Paris Agreement. Thailand also signed bilateral agreement on Article 6 cooperation with Switzerland, Japan, and Singapore. And for Article 6.4, Thailand has successfully submitted the host country participation requirement and provide approval for eligible CDM transition activities. And I'd like to add more the institutional arrangement. We do have the National Committee on Climate Change Policy chaired by Prime Minister. The committee is, as the National Committee, is convened of the private sectors, government sectors, as well as private sectors, and also the experts from relevant agencies. The task is to set policy, strategies, guidelines, as well as to work with the international partner on climate change. Is make sure that our mechanism related to climate change is rely on the international policy and guideline. For the island who are asking for the technology, such as CCUS, I'd like to allow me to invite Dr. Pandit to respond for this question.
Thank you. For the question of Ireland regarding long-term low emission development strategy, in fact, Thailand is preparing the revised version in this year and support to submit to Secretary before the COP this year. We revise long-term low emission development strategy following UN FMCP guideline, such as we include stakeholder engagement, we consider gender, we consider sustainable development goal, right? And especially for carbon capture, utilization, and storage, we find that Thailand has potential in the Gulf of Thailand, right? In the Gulf of Thailand with the support and the consultation from our partners, such as Japanese government, Japanese company, and we found at this moment preliminarily that the capacity of CCS in the Gulf of Thailand is quite large, like quite large, such as, for example, 500 million tons, for example. However, we need to prove it. We need to prove it, and we Thai government already start the law to allow the private sector and Ministry of Energy to explore the possibility and potential of CCS in the Gulf of Thailand. And we support to have COD by the year 2034. Upon the CO2 will collect from, we expect to have CCUS hub, and we will collect CO2 from energy sector, such as from industry, from cement industry, from petrochemical industry. And for hydrogen, we already have the response from private sector, including Ministry of Energy, that Thailand will start using hydrogen by the year 2040, and especially in next generation and in manufacturing. And of course, according to the timeline that we almost complete stakeholder engagement and consultation, we agree that Thailand will have clean electricity by the year 2040 around 68%. And clean electricity share in the total electricity will increase to 34% by the year 2050. That's all for Thailand. Thank you.
Thank you, Thailand. Malaysia, you have the floor.
Thank you. I would like to answer the questions from Japan first. As highlighted in my opening remarks, we have put in place a very structured institutional arrangement in place in the preparations of the BUR reports all the way to the BTR. This is to ensure the better interactions and working arrangements among multiple ministries, state government, and technical agencies, and the private sector. The biggest concerns is obviously the fact that coordinating separate sub-working group across diverse ministry can easily stall out from bureaucratic frictions. So the BTR1 underlined the importance of setting up a centralized focal point, such as the National GHG Center, the MAY GHG, to streamline data ingestions, manage multi-level quality checks, and push reports smoothly up to the cabinet for final endorsement. We view the arrangements as critical, considering the fact that the complexity and data-driven works of the BTR reporting that involve economy-wide sectors, and in certain cases, the fact that this raw activity data exists in the form that required distinct knowledge and understanding of specific expertise to translate and devise into workable numbers to be tabulated into the IPC software. So we believe that additional and continuous capacity building for the SWG members is needed to promote better understandings of the needs and requirements under the enhanced transparency framework, and on how these data are utilized in order to get better buy-in and support from larger pool of data provider. With regards to the questions from our colleagues from EU, expanding my answers from the questions from Japan, apart from the working institutional arrangements that we have put in place for the BTR, I would like also to highlight that Malaysia have put in place multi-layered policies and legal framework that not only support our climate actions. These policies and legal framework exist not only at the federal level, but also at the state level, right? So as you all may be aware of, Malaysia have 14 states, right? So the federal level coordinations are done through the National Climate Change Action Councils, chaired by the Prime Minister, which was established to play coordinating roles between federals and the state in ensuring a comprehensive climate actions and measures. As mentioned in my introduction remarks, the Climate Change Bill is aimed to provide Malaysia with a comprehensive legal frameworks that governs climate mitigations, adaptations, carbon market, climate reportings, financing and compliance, and institutional coordinations, while enabling the countries to meet the Paris Agreement commitments and net zero aspirations. Thank you.
Thank you, Malaysia. We will go back to the floor for another round of questions. In the following order, we'll take Austria, Australia, Luxembourg, and Netherlands first. Austria, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. We too would like to congratulate all parties on the submission of their first BTRs, the informative presentations and statements delivered today. We have a question to Thailand. Thailand reported that greenhouse gas emissions increased by around 50% across all sectors between 2000 and 2020. In light of this trend, Could Thailand elaborate on how it intends to further strengthen the implementation of its climate and renewable energy policies and measures in order to ensure that its 2030 mitigation target remains within reach? With regard to renewable energy, Thailand also reported an increased use of biomass and biofuels, resulting in substantial reductions in projected fossil greenhouse gas emissions. Could Thailand provide further information on the monitoring and safeguard frameworks in place to ensure that domestic sourcing of biomass and biofuel feedstocks does not adversely affect the carbon sequestration capacity in the LULUCF sector? In addition, could Thailand elaborate on the measures being taken to preserve the sector's long-term role as a net sink while simultaneously expanding bioenergy production? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Austria. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you to you all, and particularly to our ASEAN friends for your participation today. My question is to Malaysia. What policies have been effective in Malaysia for accelerating electric vehicle transition? Thank you.
Luxembourg, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Thank you also to the four parties that we are reviewing today. Congratulations for your first BTR, and coming from a small country, I know that there are challenges to prepare such reports, so congratulations again. My first question goes actually to the four parties we have today, because you all signed up to the Global Methane Pledge to take voluntary actions to contribute to a collective effort to reduce methane emissions by at least 30% from 2020 levels in 2030. And I would like to know a bit more what measures targeting methane you are putting in place in your four countries in order to meet this pledge. And then I've got a specific question from Malaysia, where you indicate in your BTR1 that renewable energy is really one of the key policy to mitigate emissions in the energy sector. And you got a target of 35% renewable energy in 2030, I think, if I'm not wrong. Can you explain a bit more how you assess the progress in this matter, and how do you see the evolution of this renewable energy in your country? Thanks so much.
Thank you. Netherlands, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, colleagues, and congratulations all four parties for submitting their first BTR and undergoing this exciting new process of FMCP. I have a question for Singapore on the decarbonization of the industry. We note that Singapore's industry represents about half of the national emissions, while at the same time you mentioned that potentials for domestic renewable energy sources are limited. Could Singapore please elaborate on which mitigation technologies will help to decarbonize the industry? And what are the key policy measures that help to implement those technologies? Thank you so much.
Well, now go to the responses. Colleagues, let me know when you're ready. Due to time, I will ask you to keep your responses concise, please. So you can just signal to me when you're ready to take the floor. Singapore, you have the floor.
Thanks, Madam Moderator, and thank the additional questions, at least directed to Singapore from Luxembourg and the Netherlands, also close partners of Singapore, so thank you for that. Maybe I'll start with the decarbonization of industry. As mentioned in my opening remarks, the key policy tool which we use to decarbonize industry is the carbon price. And so we had set a trajectory for the carbon price, $5 initially, 25, now we are $45 Singapore. So I mentioned in my opening remarks, it's about 30 odd USD. It is projected to increase to 50 to 80 Singapore dollars by 2030. However, we understand the global context, so we just noted the trajectory. But one key part of our policy is that having set the trajectory, it is also accompanied by the provision of grants. So we are actually trying to get our industries to see, look, the trajectory is coming your way, but we are prepared, the government is prepared to offer assistance or grants for energy efficient projects. There are two types of grants. I will not mention them specifically. We can come back if you want to, but these grants can go up to 50% or 70% depending on the type of proposed projects that they are intending to implement. So the policy design of this, our carbon price, is really to encourage businesses to invest in cleaner technology sooner than later, recognizing that the carbon price trajectory is on the rise. So that, I think, would be our key policy tools. There are other tools that we use, such as making sure our energy-intensive industries meet international benchmarks at the higher end. So that is another policy tool, but I leave that. And then maybe one other point to highlight is we, Singapore, and we'll put it up front, we are 95% natural gas. We have switched out of coal early. But to move out of natural gas into cleaner fuels, we either need to import renewable energy from our neighbors, because solar will only make up about 10% of our energy demand. And two, we need breakthroughs in technology. So one technology is we are hoping, and I see a lot of partners around the table, is hydrogen. We are also exploring nuclear, as small as we are, but we're looking at SMRs. So these are new technologies that we hope can help us to move, clean our energy mix from 95% natural gas. But again, to emphasize, we need support from the international community to bring the technologies forward, to make them commercially viable, and to put up the necessary supply chains. So that's for decarbonization of industry. Now, global methane measures, forgive me, it's a specific question, but I have such so for methane, Singapore has, our methane only contributed to just 0.22% of Singapore's global GHG emissions. So really, that's the margin for improvements are really very low. But many of the key, that doesn't mean we're not doing anything, of course. So many of the key methane emitting sectors like agriculture, oil, gas are either non-substantial contributors to Singapore's emission. Nevertheless, as an original signatory of the Global Methane Pledge, which has incorporated targeted methane-related measures in our NDCs. As such, Singapore has focused on reducing methane emissions from waste, and specifically two key measures. First, the government has promoted waste reduction and recycling through various initiatives, such as the mandatory waste reporting scheme for large commercial and industrial premises, including hotels, shopping malls, factories, warehouses, and venues, to raise awareness on the amount of waste produced and the potential for improving waste management systems and adopting best practices. Second, Singapore is advancing co-digestion of used water sludge. So for those who are not familiar, in Singapore, we have closed the water loop. In Singapore, we recycle all our water. But we use the water, we commingle used water sludge with our food waste so that there are synergies across, and a process that enhances biogas production. And the biogas is then utilized in high efficiency superheaters to generate renewable energy. Direct methane emissions from sewage sludge have also been significantly reduced through the sludge incineration. Let me take the opportunity also to congratulate Turkey on its global climate action agenda targets. A number of the targets relate to waste as well, and these are opportunities as well to where we can all work together to see how we reduce emissions. So I stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Singapore. Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, in order to respond to the questions on global methane pledge by Luxembourg, that yeah, Indonesia set a national emission reduction target 31 to 42 on CM2, and methane emitting sectors such as fuel, energy, agriculture, and waste are included among the 5 priority sectors for that. These sectors represent the country's main methane sources, like waste. In the waste sectors is landfills and domestic wastewater. For the agriculture, it's rice fields and enteric fermentation. For the fuel is coming from the peatland fire that release methane. And in order to respond in more detail, I would like to invite my colleagues from Indonesia, Ibu Emma Rahmawati. The floor is yours. Ibu Emma, could you please respond to the questions on methane pledge? Oh, there is a mute, she said. She said it's in mute. Could you please open the...
Halo.
Ya, silakan Bu.
Yeah, it's okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Please allow me to respond to the question related to GHG emission reduction from methane in Indonesia. We actually focusing this methane management in our NDC, in particular in waste sector, and most specifically in domestic solid waste management. In our GHG inventory in the first BTR, our methane emission is only account of around 18.12%, indicating 42.11% increase since year 2000 and 8.65% decrease since 2019. So in our NDC, that's we also measure the progress in our first BTR. We focusing on the GHG emission reduction by applying technology for landfill gas recovery and utilization, waste utilization by composting and 3 R's, reduce, recycle, and reuse. And then we also apply the RDF, refuse derived fuel, and also utilization of waste to switch from landfill disposal to zero landfill disposal in 2060. And also management of domestic liquid waste. We also conduct management of industrial waste and also domestic liquid waste in reducing GHG emission from methane. That's general response I would like to add for this question. Back to you, Pak Irawan. Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Emma. Over to you, moderators.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
if
Indonesia.
possible, can I?
Thailand, you have the floor.
Thank you
Can
for.
I from Indonesia? Hello. Yeah. Hello. 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 Can I what explained by Ibu Emma from Indonesia?
Is it okay for it? Yeah, one more our expert from Indonesia would like to explain about
Yeah.
methane. Silakan,
If
Bu.
possible.
Ya, silakan.
Okay. Yeah. As I mentioned before, under enhanced NDC, methane is management is included in waste sector emission reduction under the mitigation of waste sector mitigation. But after that, we also prepare for the second NDC. Under the second NDC, methane from oil and gas activity is also included, so that we add more mitigation action in another sector in oil and gas as well. Under the oil and gas, we try to include the program for zero routine flaring. I think this is all that my additional information from Indonesia.
Thank you, Professor Gilang. Back to you, moderators. Thank you.
Thank you, Indonesia. Thailand, you have the floor.
Thank you for all questions, and I would like to pass the question to our expert, Dr. Bandit Limmi Chokchai, to answer via online.
Thank you. For the comment from Australia, as you understand that in the Thailand BTR1, emission increased from the base year to year 2022 around 50%. Yeah, that's quite a lot. But if you look back from 2022 to 2015, around 10 years, you can see that emission sort almost constant. So that's why if you look at the detail in the report of BTR1, you see that Thailand report that the sector 1A1, that is power sector, already peaked in terms of CO2 by the year 2017. But other sector, we still try to reduce emission as much as possible. Right? Of course, for biomass, you are asking about the safeguard. Yes, if you look at long-term low emission development strategy of Thailand in the new version, that means this year, still in the draft. You can see that biomass, Thailand already meet the maximum potential, right, due to the land, due to limitation of the yield. So that's why after the year 2030, right, we are moving to other technology such as solar and renewable energy with battery energy storage, including hydrogen by the year 2040, and also in the new version of Thailand long-term low emission development strategy, we already include SMR, small nuclear reactor, like by the end of 2040-50. Of course, we also have to thank GGI who support methane plate analysis of Thailand. At this moment, we are identifying the gap of the methane emission in Thailand, and we now find that agriculture sector is the first sector that emit large methane, followed by the waste sector and energy sector and IPPU sector. We already compete the methane gap for greenhouse gas inventory with the support from GGI now, and now Thailand is moving to analysis of methane gap in the NDC by second half of this year. Of course, we are quite sure that because the cabinet of Thailand already approved NDC action plan by the year 2030. So that means the target 20.
Seems we have some internet issues from Thailand's end. Is there someone else who can respond to continue the response?
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'd like to add from my expert that we continue to having the action plan on the NDC 3.0 that can address the methane emission to helping Thailand to meet our 2050 net zero target. So it's make sure that we are able to go along with our plan for make sure that any activities can address our GHG emission. Thank you.
Thank you, Thailand. Colleagues, we've been informed that we have to vacate the room at 1 p.m. sharp. Therefore, I'd like to ask Malaysia if it's okay with you to provide your response, to provide a written response to the questions.
I will get my colleague to answer the first questions on EV and RE, and I will try my best to answer the second questions with regard to the methane.
Okay, you have the floor.
All right. Thank you, Vice Chair. So I will answer first on the EV and then followed by the renewable energy. Malaysia's energy transition policies are guided by the need to balance the energy trilemma, which is security, affordability, and sustainability, in a pragmatic, orderly, and just manner. As a developing and trade-dependent economy, Malaysia recognizes that the transition towards a low-carbon future must ensure reliable and affordable energy supply for households, industries, and economic growth, while progressively reducing GHG emissions and strengthening climate resilience. In this regard, renewable energy, RE, and electric mobility are key pillars of Malaysia's long-term transition strategy under the National Energy Transition Roadmap, NETR. Malaysia is therefore pursuing a whole-of-nation approach that accelerates clean energy deployment, strengthens infrastructure and grid readiness, promotes investment and innovation, and creates new economic opportunities while ensuring that the transition remains inclusive, cost-effective, and supportive of national development priorities. Specifically on electric vehicle, Malaysia adopts a whole-of-ecosystem approach covering fiscal incentives, charging infrastructures, industrial development and grid readiness, and full exemptions on excise duties for locally assembled EVs until 2027. Green mobility is identified as one of the six key energy transition levers under NETR. Key measures introduced by the government include import duty, excise duty exemptions, road tax exemptions, tax relief for charging equipment, and incentive for EV manufacturing and supply chain investment. Malaysia is also actively expanding public charging infrastructure, including fast chargers along major highways and urban centers, which we have a target of 10,000 EV charging stations by 2025, while strengthening grid infrastructure and smart charging capabilities. On the question on renewable energy, under the National Energy Transition Roadmap, Malaysia has increased its renewable energy ambition from 40% installed capacity by 2040 to 70% installed capacity by 2050. Today, Malaysia has already achieved approximately 31% renewable energy installed capacity and remains confident in achieving the target of 35% installed capacity by 2030 through continued policy support, infrastructure enhancement, and private sector participation. Malaysia has made significant progress in renewable energy deployment over the past decade, particularly in solar energy. Renewable energy installed capacity has increased steadily through programs such as large-scale solar, which is at the utility level, rooftop solar initiatives, and self-consumption schemes, and corporate green electricity programs. At the same time, Malaysia is strengthening grid infrastructure, energy storage system, and regional interconnection to support high penetration of VRE, variable renewable energy. The government has also enabled cross-border renewable electricity trade and is positioning Malaysia as renewable energy hub under the ASEAN Power Grid Initiative. Looking ahead, Malaysia sees RE not only as a climate solution, but also as a new engine of economic growth, investment, and industrial competitiveness. Future RE expansion will focus on scaling solar, hydro, bioenergy, and emerging technologies, while ensuring system reliability, affordability, and a just transition for industries and communities. Malaysia will continue to adopt a pragmatic and orderly transition pathway that reflects national circumstances, developmental priorities, and long-term energy security consideration.
In the benefit of time, in the interest of time, I will make my answers on mitigations, methane mitigations, short and sweet. For Malaysia, mitigation methane is no longer preferable environmental options. It is a central climate imperative. Tackling methane emissions presents a world most viable pathway for rapid, cost-effective climate mitigations. We remain firm in our commitments to the collective goals of slashing global methane emissions by at least 30% by 2030. Some of the examples of measures to reduce methane is basically in terms of methane capture in the waste sectors and reductions of flarings and ventings in energy sectors. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Malaysia. Colleagues, due to time, we'll take the remainder of the questions from Canada, Cook Islands, Saudi Arabia, Malawi, and Philippines, and then we will ask the parties under the FMCP to please provide the responses in written format after the session, and then the questions and responses will be published on the FMCP page. And then just a gentle reminder as well that we still have the informal dialogue where you can have further discussions. I kindly encourage the interventions to be limited to the most pressing question and to remain concise and clear. With that said, Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, colleagues, and congratulations to all parties on their first BTRs. Our question is to Singapore. In your presentation, you highlighted that Singapore has succeeded in becoming one of the most solar-dense cities in the world, supported by battery storage. How is Singapore managing the life cycle of PV panels and batteries to limit e-waste? Thank you.
Cook Islands, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Congratulations to parties for the successful preparation and submission of your first BTR. My question is for Singapore. As a fellow small island developing state, we appreciate the insights shared on your experience under the ETF. Singapore emphasized a whole-of-government approach in the preparation of its first BTR, including the MRV task force and the interagency working group responsible for climate reporting. Could you please elaborate on the mechanisms used within your interagency working group to ensure consistency and quality control across the different BTR chapters? Additionally, could you briefly describe quality assurance and quality control procedures applied prior to submission and whether those differ from internal coordination and review processes used during reporting preparation? Thank you.
Saudi Arabia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, we would like to congratulate the parties for submitting their first biannual transparency report. And we have a question to Indonesia. So, Indonesia's first BTR notes that the coal share in final energy consumption rose from 5% in 2000 to 25% in 2022. Could Indonesia please elaborate on how it reconciles this upward trend in coal use with its NDC emission reduction pathway to 2030? Thank you.
Malawi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon or good morning. My questions focus on Indonesia, but let me first of all join others in congratulating all the parties for the good work of submission and by also undergoing this very important process. So I have two questions. The first one is Indonesia reported that it has achieved both unconditional and conditional emission reduction targets during the period 2020 to 2022. Could Indonesia elaborate on the key policies and measures that contributed most significantly to this great achievement? The second one is related to the adaptation. So Indonesia had identified challenges in measuring resilience outcomes and adaptation effectiveness. Could Indonesia share any methodologies or indicators currently being developed to address these challenges? Because this is a common challenge, and we could also learn from Indonesia on what they are doing to address this challenge in measuring resilience outcomes and adaptation effectiveness. Thank you.
Philippines, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations to our Southeast Asian neighbors for submitting the first BTR and undergoing this FMCP. My question is for Malaysia. Can you share what are the institutional, technical, or regulatory challenges Malaysia has encountered in developing its national carbon market policy, and what lessons have emerged from the process? Thank you.
Thank you, delegates, for the questions, and thank you, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand for your responses. Please join me in giving them a round of applause. Let us now turn to the next set of parties under the FMCP. I would now like to invite Canada to make an introductory statement. The statement will be delivered by Ms. Jean-Marie Huddleston, Canada's Chief Climate Negotiator and Director General of Multilateral Affairs and Climate Change at Environment and Climate Change Canada. Ms. Huddleston, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and greetings to everyone. Canada places great importance on the FMCP review process, which provides an important opportunity for all of us to reflect on our reporting practices and learn from one another. And having the FMCP in this open setting also importantly raises our collective standards of transparency. So I'm pleased to be here today representing Canada, and I'm joined by some experts in the room and online as well. Canada has one of the largest land masses in the world, equivalent in size to all of Europe combined, with a population of 41 million people. We experience a wide range of climate conditions, from very warm summers to very cold winters. And we have a diverse economy that includes both natural resources such as forests and critical minerals, as well as emissions-intensive industries such as oil and gas extraction. Canada is also a highly decentralized federation where the federal government works closely with provincial and territorial governments on the protection of the environment, which is a shared area of jurisdiction. Canada has made significant efforts over the past decade to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to a changing climate in collaboration with provincial and territorial governments, Indigenous people, and industry. Canada published its first national adaptation strategy in 2023, recognizing the need for concerted effort to ensure people and communities are more prepared for and resilient to the impacts of climate change. And since the adoption of the strategy, we've advanced climate adaptation efforts in a manner that's contributed to increased public and private investment, expanded data and research, and improved understanding of the climate impacts on health, on infrastructure, on ecosystems, and the economy. And progress has also been made in developing and applying climate resilient building codes, standards, and guidance to support more informed and evidence-based decision-making at all levels. We've also succeeded in bending the curve to bring emissions down. Canada's emissions went from an upward trajectory a decade ago to one of sustained emission reductions. Canada's progress has been advanced through a robust regulatory approach, including industrial carbon pricing, supported by a number of policies, programs, and investments. We acknowledge that there is more work to be done, and we're taking the actions needed to contribute meaningfully to the Paris Agreement goals. Notably, one of recent domestic developments was the release of Canada's Climate Competitiveness Strategy in 2025, which will accelerate the transition to a low-carbon economy. It aims to strengthen industrial carbon markets, to streamline regulations, including through enhanced methane regulations in the oil and gas sector, and to drive investment in clean energy, innovation, and technology through measures such as investment tax credits, a sustainable bond framework, and sustainable investment guidelines. Mass electrification is another key pillar to Canada's approach to addressing climate change. Access to abundant, affordable, non- and low-emissions power has become key to driving emission reductions, providing energy security and sovereignty, supporting competitiveness, and attracting investment to support the transition to net zero. In May of this year, Canada released a new national strategy for an electrified Canadian economy, responding to the challenge and opportunity this moment requires. To meet the growing demand for energy as we work to electrify more of our economy, for example, through increasing the share of zero-emission vehicles in the transportation sector, this will require at least a doubling of Canada's electricity system infrastructure by 2050, including better connecting regions of the country through stronger and modernized transmission linkages. Related, as part of the transition to net zero, Canada's Sustainable Jobs Act and Action Plan are focused on investments to train, reskill, and diversify our workforce, and this includes ongoing engagement with provinces, territories, Indigenous peoples, industry, and labor organizations. Canada is also proud to deliver on international climate finance. Between 2015 and 2022, Canada provided and mobilized over $8.7 billion to developing countries. In 2021, Canada committed to delivering $5.3 billion over 5 years through 2026, with a focus on support for the clean energy transition and coal phase-out, climate-smart agriculture and food systems, nature-based solutions and biodiversity, and climate governance. Canada fully delivered on its $5.3 billion commitment as of March of this year, and in April announced a new goal to deliver over $13 billion in climate-related support to developing countries over the next 5 years. In closing, I invite you to watch Canada's pre-recorded video, which highlights progress towards our 2030 NDC, as reported in our first BTR, as well as expanding on more recent developments. Canada appreciates the opportunity to speak about our climate efforts here today, and we look forward to responding to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. I would now like to invite Japan to make an introductory statement. The statement will be delivered by Mr. Jairo Hiratsuka, Director of the Office of Climate Change Negotiation and Cooperation, Global Environment Bureau, Ministry of the Environment. Mr. Hiratsuka, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everyone, distinguished delegates and colleagues. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity today to present Japan's climate change initiative and progress for the first time at the FMCP session under EDF. Enhancing transparency is essential for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Japan submitted its first BTR in October 2024 and underwent a technical expert review in September 2025. Additionally, in February 2025, Japan submitted its NDC 3.0, which includes emission reduction targets for 2035 and 2040. The 2030 target in the previous NDC is a 46% reduction from the 2013 level, while the 2035 and the 2040 targets are 60% and 73% reductions, respectively, from the same base year. These targets have been set to be consistent with the global 1.5-degree goal target. Concrete domestic plans are essential for achieving the targets set out in the NDCs. To ensure the steady achievement of the NDCs, Japan revised its plan for global warming countermeasures in conjunction with the submission of the latest NDC. The revised plan clearly outlined a policy of consistency and steadily following a linear pathway toward achieving net zero emissions by 2050. This is intended to enhance the continuity and predictability of policies accelerate efforts, investment, and innovation toward decarbonization, and promote measures that contribute to achieving emission reductions and economic growth simultaneously. Specific measures include an energy transition that makes maximum use of power sources with high decarbonization potential, such as renewable energy and nuclear power. Introduction of innovative equipment and improvement of energy-saving performance, accelerating regional decarbonization to contribute to regional revitalization, and shifting to the decarbonized lifestyle, such as energy-efficient housing. Cross-cutting efforts, including the introduction of pro-growth carbon pricing and transition to a circular economy, and the securing of carbon sinks, such as forest and blue carbon, and contributing to global emission reductions by utilizing Japan's technology, such as through the Joint Crediting Mechanism, or JCM, that is consistent with Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement. As a recent topic, I'd like to highlight a pro-growth carbon pricing. This initiative is designed to advance green transformation, or GX, which aims to achieve decarbonization, economic growth, and a stable energy supply simultaneously. It includes the issuance of GX Economy Transition Bond, through which the Japanese government provides approximately 20 trillion yen in upfront investment support for decarbonization, as well as the implementation of GX ETS, Japan's emission trading system. The combination of investment support and carbon pricing is expected to generate over 150 trillion yen, nearly $1 trillion in public and private investment over 10 years. Regarding the GX ETS, a voluntary ETS has been in effect since 2023, with the participation of companies accounting for nearly 60% of Japan's total greenhouse gas emissions. It has become mandatory from April this year. Furthermore, regarding the plan for global warming countermeasures, the government conducts annual follow-ups to review the progress of each policy and measures, drawing on insights from the relevant committee, thereby maintaining a PDCA cycle. Through these efforts, Japan is making steady progress toward achieving its NDCs, having achieved a 28.7% reduction in 2024 compared to 2013. Going forward, we will continue to advance emission reduction efforts while broadly sharing the outcome and lessons learned through these efforts to contribute to global decarbonization. I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to those who have taken an interest in Japan's climate change policies, reviewed Japan's BTR, and submitted written questions prior to the SB session. We have already submitted our responses to the written questions. If you have any follow-up questions or further clarification, please raise them during the Q&A session that follows. We will do our best to respond to your question. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Japan. I would now like to invite New Zealand to make an introductory statement. The statement will be delivered by Mr. Todd Crode, Head of Delegation, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and Mr. James Coombs, Manager at the Ministry for the Environment. New Zealand, you have the floor.
Tēnā koutou katoa, malo ni. The Enhanced Transparency Framework contributes positively and strongly to continuous improvement in action, support, and transparency. I will direct you to New Zealand's pre-recorded video presentation and its biennial transparency report, which contain more detail than we can cover in 5 minutes today. I'm Todd Crode from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and it is my pleasure as Head of Delegation to be here for New Zealand's first Facilitative Multilateral Consideration of Progress, covering our first biennial transparency report under the Paris Agreement. I pass on well wishes from Tokelau, which since 2017 has been included in New Zealand's Paris Agreement and UNFCCC accounting and reporting. I'm joined by colleagues, including Mr. James Coombs of the Ministry for the Environment, our country lead on the FMCP. I'll pass to James, who will outline New Zealand's national circumstances and provide headlines on our domestic implementation.
Thank you, Todd. Ata Maria koutou. Good morning, colleagues. I'll open with some context. New Zealand has a population of 5 million people and is located in the South Pacific with a land area of around 260,000 square kilometres and an exclusive economic zone of around 4 million square kilometres. We have a unique emissions profile dominated by the land sector, with more than half of our gross emissions coming from agriculture. Over 30% of our land area is legally protected public conservation land, and there is significant privately owned forestry, which provides considerable carbon sequestration. In addition, our electricity sector is largely decarbonised, with renewable generation sitting at around 86% in 2024. This is primarily through hydroelectricity, alongside substantial geothermal and onshore wind generation. These factors mean that New Zealand's pathway to lower emissions is primarily in hard-to-abate sectors, requiring tailored solutions across agriculture and land use. Our 2030 nationally determined contribution, which we call NDC1, is to reduce net emissions to 50% below gross 2005 levels. To meet this, we are prioritising domestic mitigation action underpinned by our legal framework, the Climate Change Response Act, the CCRA. This law sets out our 2050 net zero target, a system of legally binding emission budgets, the requirement for an emissions reduction plan for each emissions budget, the New Zealand Emissions Trading Scheme, our domestic carbon market, and established an independent climate change commission. New Zealand is implementing mitigation policies across all sectors of our economy. Some examples include, we were the first country to mandate climate-related financial disclosures. The New Zealand Emissions Trading Scheme is 17 years old and has the broadest sectorial coverage in the world, pricing emissions in all sectors of our economy except for agriculture. And in agriculture, we are investing heavily in mitigation technologies through AgriZero New Zealand, a $400 million New Zealand joint venture between the farming industry, banks and the government to accelerate the development, deployment and adoption of agricultural mitigation tools. As shown by our projections in the first BTR, our NDC1 gap has narrowed from 149 million tonnes in 2021 to 89 million tonnes of CO2 equivalent in 2024. We project further reductions from recent policies outlined in our second emissions reduction plan for the period 2026 to 2030. We are also developing opportunities that could enable New Zealand to undertake cooperative mitigation under Article 6 in the future. On adaptation, our policy cycle is also legislated by the CCRA and maps into the Paris Agreement's adaptation policy cycle. Our legislation prescribes national climate change risk assessments every 6 years, the development of national adaptation plans, and regular progress reports on the implementation and effectiveness of our NAPs, which is conducted by the Independent Climate Change Commission. Two tangible adaptation initiatives we are prioritising include: the first is the development of a new national flood map to be published in 2027. This map will show people where floods may happen regionally and locally. The second is a requirement for local governments to undertake local adaptation planning in the highest risk areas to identify what investment needs to happen in that area so that people know what to expect. With that, I will pass the floor back to Todd to discuss New Zealand's climate-related support.
Kia ora, James. New Zealand recognises the critical role of means of implementation in enabling effective climate action in developing countries. New Zealand is committed to delivering this support. The BTR reporting period overlaps with two of New Zealand's climate finance commitment periods. During the reporting period, New Zealand exceeded its commitment to provide 300 million New Zealand dollars in climate finance for 2019 to 22. In 2021, we then significantly scaled up our climate finance commitment, increasing it fourfold to $1.3 billion for 2022 to 25. More than 60% of this funding went to the Pacific and more than 60% to adaptation. All of our climate finance is provided as grants. We have targeted areas such as climate mobility, early warning systems, science and information, renewable energy, access to climate finance, and on-the-ground adaptation initiatives in water, food security, and coastal adaptation. We have also provided flexible, untagged climate-related funding to 5 Pacific countries, responding to our partners' calls for more predictable and flexible financing. With those highlights, we will conclude our introductory remarks. We appreciate the critical role of this process in learning from each other and facilitating implementation, and we look forward to your questions. Ngā mihi nui.
Thank you, New Zealand. I would now like to invite Norway to make an introductory statement. This statement will be delivered by Ms. Marianne Carlsen, Special Advisor and Chief Negotiator, Department for Climate Change, Norwegian Ministry of Climate and Environment. Ms. Carlsen, you have the floor.
Thank you for the opportunity to present Norway's climate policies and our first BTR under the Enhanced Transparency Framework. The process of developing and submitting our first BTR and undergoing the review process has been and given us a valuable learning. We also appreciate the opportunity to exchange experiences and learn from each other through the FMCP process, and it is heartening to see so many seats being filled in this room. Last year, we submitted our new NDC, which is a target of reducing emissions by 70 to 75% by 2035 compared to 1990 levels. This builds on the NDC for 2030, with a target of at least 55% reduction by 2030 compared to 1990 levels. The scope of Norway's NDC is commitments under Article 4 on mitigation. This means that the NDC is focused on reducing emissions and does not capture the full breadth of Norwegian climate policy. Norway also have a long-term goal of becoming a low-emission society by 2050. All targets are enshrined in the Norwegian Climate Change Act. The NDC and the climate targets sets out our level of ambition. These targets are supported by strategies and plans for implementation, such as government white papers. Additionally, we also systematically to achieve our climate targets through the climate status and plan. This plan is presented each year together with the national budget and sets out a pathway and concrete measures for emission reductions. Norway climate policies is based on cost effectiveness and the polluters pay principle. We also use a broad mix of policy instruments, including carbon pricing, regulations, and support for technology development. CO2 taxes and emission trading together covers today 85% of Norway's greenhouse gas emissions. This approach is already delivered results in key sectors. In the transport sector, strong and consistent policy initiatives have led to rapid uptake of electric vehicles. In 2025, zero-emission vehicles accounted for 96% of new car sales and around 98% so far in 2026. Norway is also developing and deploying carbon capture and storage at scale. We now have a full-scale CCS value chain in operation, covering capture, transport, and storage of CO2. The project is developed in close cooperation between the government and the industry and is open for international use. These examples illustrate how a combination of policy instruments can drive both technology change and emission reductions. Total greenhouse gas emissions in Norway were approximately 44.6 million tons of CO2 equivalents in 2024, representing a continued decline compared to previous years. Emissions are now significantly lower than in 1990, and we expect this downward trend to continue as preliminary figures for 2025 is showing us. In addition to these domestic reductions, Norway has a close cooperation with the European Union when it comes to climate policy. Norwegian participation in the common European climate frameworks contributes to reducing emissions in Europe at large, for instance, through the European Emission Trading System. Furthermore, the Norwegian Global Emission Reduction Initiative directly contributes to emission reductions and green transitions in developing countries, utilizing the Paris Agreement Article 6 framework. While we are well underway, we also recognize that further efforts are needed to achieve our targets, and that the transformation ahead remains both ambitious and challenging. Norway remains committed to strengthening our climate policies, delivering on our targets, and contributed to international cooperation under the Paris Agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway. I would now like to invite the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland and Northern Ireland to make an introductory statement. The statement will be delivered by Ms. Kate Hughes, UK Lead Climate Negotiator and Head of Delegation. Ms. Hughes, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and hello to everyone here in the room and to those watching virtually. I'm Kate Hughes, Lead Climate Negotiator and Head of Delegation from the Department of Energy, Security and Net Zero. I'm honoured to be here today to represent the UK. I was last here representing the UK in its multilateral assessment in 2021 during COP26, so I'm pleased to return in this new format. The UK is fully committed to the UNFCCC, the Paris Agreement, and to keeping 1.5 degrees in reach. Under the Paris Agreement, the UK has now communicated our 2030 NDC, a target of at least a 68% reduction on 1990 levels, and our 2035 NDC, a target of at least an 81% reduction in emissions compared with 1990 levels, representing our highest possible ambition and in line with 1.5 degrees. The crisis in the Middle East has yet again underscored why the transition to clean energy and a nature-positive future is the right decision, critical for our security and growth. The UK remains committed to partnering with others to accelerate the transition globally, building on our strong domestic record. And we also recognise the importance of reporting clearly and transparently so that all parties can continue to learn from each other, increase our ambition and track progress. We found our recent technical expert review immensely helpful to improve our reporting. The team provided valuable feedback on how to align the narrative in our BTR and our common tabular format tables, and provided guidance on archiving processes. Thank you. We're already working on reflecting these recommendations in our second BTR and 9th national communication, which we'll submit by the 31st of December. Since the publication of BTR1, the UK has been busy delivering new climate policy and plans to help us achieve our targets. For example, we have published our Carbon Budget and Growth Delivery Plan, which sets out how the UK will continue to reduce emissions in a way that lowers bills and secures good jobs in line with our landmark 2008 Climate Change Act. It details the projected emissions savings up to 2037, encompassing the 2030 and 2035 NDCs. We have published our Warm Homes Plan, which is the biggest investment in home upgrades ever in the UK. We've announced the Energy Independence Bill, which will tackle the affordability crisis and protect consumers by cutting bills and setting up the right infrastructure. And just last week, we set out our proposed level for the 7th carbon budget, a target of 535 megatons of CO2e, or roughly 87% emissions reduction in the period from 2038 to 2042. Internationally, the UK will continue to push for global climate action, particularly to support the most vulnerable. We remain committed to providing climate finance and have met and exceeded our climate finance target of £11.6 billion over the last 5 financial years, and we have tripled our adaptation finance. Around 89% of our climate finance is delivered through grants, and we have set out our future climate finance commitments over the coming 3 years. Working in partnership is critical to upholding the Paris Agreement. The UK continues to work with others through the Action Agenda to accelerate ambition and reinforce accountability, feeding into the Paris cycle and building momentum towards the second global stocktake. The UK continues to demonstrate leadership across the Action Agenda, driving a wide range of ambitious sectoral coalitions like the Forest Climate Leaders Partnership, Climate and Clean Air Coalition, and the Powering Past Coal Alliance, working in close partnership with governments, businesses, and civil society to accelerate delivery. Through these initiatives, we are helping to catalyse collaborative, practical action on the ground and strengthen collective momentum towards our global climate goals. Following the publication of the BTR synthesis report, it is clear that we all face many similar challenges. We know that there are always ways to improve how we report on the action we have taken, and that there are valuable lessons we can all learn from each other. We've received 11 written questions ahead of this session, and I'd like to thank those countries for submitting those on our mitigation action, our greenhouse gas inventory, and finance support provided. We look forward to discussing the key issues we all face with all parties in the room, both now and during the informal dialogues later today, and to learning from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, United Kingdom. I would now like to open the floor for questions from parties. I will collect a number of questions from parties before inviting the delegates from Canada, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, and the United Kingdom to respond. As a reminder, kindly begin by indicating which party or parties under the FMCP your question is directed to. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you to those who delivered national statements. Very, very insightful. We have some questions for Canada, New Zealand, and the UK. So Australia would be interested to hear more about Canada's governance and transparency arrangements that help it to track progress towards its NDCs. Can Canada tell us more about the 3 progress reports, that is 2023, 2025, and intended 2027, on progress towards its 2030 target, and how these help to track and encourage implementation of various federal measures? For New Zealand, can you give any more information about the $400 million investment in mitigation technologies in the agriculture sector? Interested to know what sort of investments you're contemplating there. And for the UK, Australia congratulates the UK on its leadership in setting ambitious NDC targets. We'd be interested to hear more about what the UK is doing to accelerate solar uptake at both the household level and on a larger scale. Thank you.
Thank you. Republic of Korea, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Korea welcomes all parties participating in the first FMCP today and would like to comment on Japan and Norway. We are particularly impressed by Japan's GX Economy Transition Bonds and the Green Innovation Fund, which support the decarbonization of the hard-to-abate sectors such as steel and cement. Could Japan share its experience and lessons learned on how it has allocated these substantial funds across each industries? Then turning to Norway, we highly commend the successful commercialization of the Northern Lights projects and its transition to full operation. We'd like to ask how Norway structured the respective roles of the public finance and the private investment throughout this journey from the early stage to full operations. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Cook Islands, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Congratulations again to parties for the successful submission of your first BTR. I have 2 questions, one for the UK and one for Norway. My first question is for the United Kingdom. You have done really well in transparency of communications to the UNFCCC. While the UK's latest NDC provides a large amount of detail, Can you please provide more clarity on the anticipated role of carbon dioxide removal in delivering your 2035 NDC, including the scale of removals expected and how these assumptions align with broader emissions reduction efforts? My second question to Norway. Given the importance of land use change, and forestry removals to Norway's 2035 target, when does the government expect to publish the methodology that will be used to quantify these removals, and how will it ensure transparency regarding your contribution to target achievement? Thank you.
Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, colleagues. We have two questions. The first one to our colleagues from Norway, and the second question to our colleagues from the United Kingdom. For Norway, we understand from Norway's first BTR that the Longship full-scale carbon capture and storage demonstration project was scheduled to begin operations in 2025. Could you please provide an update on the project status and lessons from Longship's contribution to Norway's NDC implementation that could be relevant for other countries' CCS efforts? Thank you. And for the United Kingdom, from a strategic perspective, what have been the most important drivers enabling progress towards the UK's climate targets to date? And where does the UK see the main challenges and opportunities over the remainder of the current NDC period? Thank you.
Okay, we'll take one more before we go to the parties for responses. Saudi Arabia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to first thank the parties for this presentation, and we congratulate them on presenting the first BTR. We would like to ask a couple of questions. First, we'd like to ask the Norway. Norway reported CCS measures as projected to deliver 750 CO2 equivalent of emission reduction in 2030. Could Norway elaborate on the role of CCS plays in achieving its NDC target, and what policy does Norway is considering that support scale up for the CCS? Also, we would like to ask Japan, what contribution does Japan expect on the CCUS to make its 2030 and 2040 targets? Also, we noticed an expected increase in electricity demands associated with semiconductor products. Could Japan please explain how this anticipated demand growth is accounted for its 2030 projections, and what it assumes about the pace of renewable nuclear and thermal plant decarbonization needed to meet the demand while staying on the 46% trajectory? A question for the UK. The UK WM projection shows emission declining 17.8% by 2030 from 2022 levels, yet the NDC requires a further reduction to reach the 60-80 target. What additional policies and measures does the UK consider to implement for closing this gap? A question for Canada. Canada reported over $8 million provided and mobilized between 2015 and 2020, and a $5.3 billion commitment for 2021 to 2026. Could Canada describe how its post-2026 commitment is being framed in the context of the new collective quantified goal agreed at Baku? Thank you.
Colleagues, I'll give you a few minutes, and then you can just let me know when you're ready to respond. New Zealand, please.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'd like to respond to Australia's question, which asked for more information about our $400 million investment into mitigation technologies in the ag sector, as well as what sort of investments we are contemplating. So for New Zealand, through the Accelerating New Mitigations Work Programme, the New Zealand government has committed over 400 million New Zealand dollars over the next 4 years to accelerate the development and availability of new tools and technology to reduce on-farm agricultural emissions. The investment includes scaled-up investment in research and development through the Ag Emission Centre. It includes Māori-led research projects to reduce emissions from agriculture on the lands and businesses of our Indigenous peoples. We're looking at streamlining New Zealand's regulatory system to manage the risks of these new technologies, to make sure that they operate effectively and efficiently. We're ensuring farmers can measure their emissions and the impact of any mitigation technology through a standardised farm emissions methodology and on-farm emissions calculator, which is consistent with our national greenhouse gas inventory. And we are also supporting market acceptance of foods produced using these technologies, including through the International Food Safety Body Codex. With specific reference to AgriZero New Zealand, as I mentioned in my opening statement, there is substantial investment in this space to accelerate the development, commercialisation and uptake of agricultural mitigation technologies. It is a joint venture and has invested in 18 companies and research initiatives to accelerate the development of these tools. They include the development of methane vaccines, various methane inhibitors and probiotics, and tools to reduce nitrous oxide emissions. We expect the first tools from AgriZero New Zealand's portfolio to be commercially available this year, and several will be widespread and in use by 2030. Some tools are already in early stages of adoption, while others are expected in the near term, and they are being developed across all components of the agricultural supply chain. These will put tools in the hands of farmers for the dairy, meat, deer, beef and sheep parts of the agricultural sector, and early uptake is especially around a particular piece of technology called EcoPond, as an example, which can cut methane emissions from effluent ponds by up to 90%. This technology is already being piloted by our dairy producers and processors, and it is used on 250 Fonterra and Synlait supplier farms. Other investments include Ruminant Biotech, which is a New Zealand company developing a slow-release biodegradable methane inhibiting bolus. This is suited for pastoral farms. Armour is a New Zealand farmer-led startup developing cow-wearable technology to reduce nitrous oxide emissions. And lastly, Biolumic, New Zealand-founded company utilising light to develop low-emissions ryegrass with increased productivity gains. And sort of more breaking news of this week, the government has announced a new deployment initiative called the AgriZero New Zealand Early Adoption Accelerator. This is a 3-year program to accelerate the early adoption of proven tools and technologies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions on farm. This is about backing farmers on the ground to reduce agricultural emissions without undermining productivity or profitability. This initiative is jointly funded by government and industry to ramp up the use of proven tools. And the accelerator will contribute up to 51 million New Zealand dollars of existing Crown funding over 3 years, with the government matching dollar-for-dollar investment with agricultural industry partners. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Sorry, thank you very much, and thank you for all of these questions. Let me take Australia's question first. Thank you for this on our work on solar uptake. In June last year, we published the UK Solar Roadmap. This sets out the pathway to achieving our mission and includes over 70 actions for government and industry to remove barriers to deployment. The Solar Roadmap sets out how much land we expect to be taken up by solar farms as part of our Clean Power 2030 commitment. 269,000 solar installations were completed in 2025. That's 2.8 gigawatts of capacity, which is enough to power the equivalent of 1 million homes. That's the highest total ever recorded in a calendar year for the UK and 37% larger than the year before. And recently, we have announced that plug-in solar, low-cost solar panels that families can buy at supermarkets and put on their balconies or outdoor space will be made available in the UK for the first time. And we are announcing that we intend to bring forward the government's next annual renewables auction to July, inviting renewables companies to invest in UK energy. The most recent round was the biggest ever, and alongside the previous auction, we have confirmed enough clean power to power the equivalent of 23 million homes. I know that Australia is also accelerating your solar power rollout to homes, and we are very keen to continue learning from you on this too. Let me come to the Cook Islands next. Thank you for your question too on our transparency in greenhouse gas removals. We expect greenhouse gas removals to play a significant role in supporting emissions reduction targets by offsetting residual emissions from hard-to-abate sectors. We expect to have a small amount of GGR capacity deployed by 2030. We are taking a portfolio approach because we know we need a mix of technologies to reach net zero. However, we have been clear that GGRs are not a substitute for decisive action across the economy to reduce emissions. Early action on demand reduction, electrification, and nature-based measures will be needed alongside GGRs to deliver the UK's carbon budgets, NDCs, and net zero target. On the 29th of October 2025, the Carbon Budgets and Growth Delivery Plan was published, setting out how the UK will continue to reduce emissions in a way that lowers bills and secures good jobs in line with our Climate Change Act. It details the projected emission savings from each policy and proposal, which demonstrates that this package will enable the UK to reduce its carbon emissions to the level required by Carbon Budget 6. In this plan, the government presents a deployment assumption of 0.7 MTPA of engineered removals by 2030, increasing to 21.8 MTPA by 2035. We are also contributing to the IPCC working group to develop methodologies for emerging carbon dioxide removal and carbon capture, use and storage technologies to better track and report such activities in future BTRs. Canada, thank you for your question too about our climate targets and the drivers for those. One of the most important drivers enabling progress towards our climate targets so far has been our world-leading climate framework, which sets out our commitment to reach net zero emissions by 2050 and puts it in law. So under this, we established legally binding 5-year caps on emissions, which we call our carbon budgets. We set those 12 years in advance. This legislation also requires us to publish our plans for meeting carbon budgets in advance. As I said, this has created a stable environment for investment in clean energy and decarbonisation, which has helped to drive progress to date. The targets we've set for ourselves here and in our NDC are highly ambitious. And so, unlike others, we are, of course, continuing to face some challenges in delivering this. For example, the inflationary impacts of the conflict in the Middle East have increased costs, which has a direct impact on delivering on our plans. But of course, there's also an opportunity to accelerate the transition away from fossil fuels towards clean energy in the UK through this. And we continue to seek as many opportunities as we can to drive forward our progress in the best way that we can. And thank you to my colleagues from Saudi Arabia for your question on closing the gap as well. So since our first BTR, the UK has updated its historic estimates and policies and savings. The latest historic emissions inventory was published as official statistics in February 2026, covering 1990 to 2024, and used as part of the UK's national inventory document in April 2026. The Carbon Budget and Growth Delivery Plan, published in October 2025, which I've already mentioned, in this the UK quantified 96% of the required savings for the 2030 NDC and 99% of those required savings for our 2035 NDC. So the UK has already reduced emissions by 53% compared to 1990 levels, while growing our economy and demonstrating strong early progress towards our targets. The government continues to take action to strengthen delivery through further policy development and implementation, and this reflects our ongoing approach to delivery in line with evidence, the best available science, delivery progress, as well as independent advice from our Climate Change Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, United Kingdom. Norway, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for the questions. We will respond to the questions from South Korea, Canada and Saudi Arabia on CCS first, and then move to the second topic from Cook Island after, if that's okay. Thank you. I will give the floor to my colleague.
Thank you. I will provide some answers to the questions connected to carbon capture and storage. I will first start with the status of the Longship project, which is correct, came into operations in 2025, and it's Europe's first complete value chain for CCS, encompassing industrial CO2 capture, transport, and safe and permanent storage of CO2. So it encompasses of 2 Norwegian capture sites, one of them that came into operation last year. It's a cement plant outside of Oslo, which has started to capture the CO2 and transport it to Northern Lights, the storage facility of the project. And to date, around 70,000 tons of CO2 have been injected. That specific cement plant is planned to capture around 400,000 tons of CO2 per year. And then we have the second capture facility of the project, the waste-to-energy plant, which is planned to become operational in 2029 and capture 350,000 tons of CO2 per year. So these 2 capture projects will indeed contribute to Norway's NDC and climate targets for 2030 and 2035. In 2025, Northern Lights, the transport and storage provider, also took an investment decision to expand the storage capacity from 1.5 million tons of CO2 to 5 million tons of CO2 per year. And the project is designed to not only store CO2 from Norwegian capture sites, but also from capture sites around Europe. And later this year, the storage site will start to receive CO2 from a capture site in Denmark and the Netherlands. And the storage site has also entered into a commercial agreement with a capture plant in Sweden. And this has been the intention with the project from the beginning to facilitate both the reduction of Norwegian emissions, but also to be able to store CO2 from capture sites in Europe to facilitate cross-border cooperation and also technology development. In terms of the public-private cooperation, this has been an important part of the project. It's a result of close cooperation between the government and the industrial partners over many years. The government has invested around 23 billion euros in the project and have tailor-made state aid agreements to be able to kickstart the market and to solve the coordination challenge between the different actors in the value chain. And this includes risk-sharing mechanisms for the long-term liability. And in terms of going forward, Norway is actively exploring measures to support CCS and CDR deployment, both in terms of emission reductions, but also to contribute to technology development. Thank you.
So, on the very pertinent question raised by Cook Islands, I must say we've been frustrated that we haven't been able to come up with a good indicators for the LULUCF sector to be accounted towards the NDC. We've been open about this in our BTR. It's been an issue in the review, and it's certainly an issue for us trying to arrive at the good indicator in our reporting and in these discussions. And indeed, we did try to land this issue before we came here, but then this sector is seen from the atmosphere by far the biggest sector that we have. I mean, it's the net, the gross increment in the LULUCF sector is about the size of our total emissions, and the net is about half, sometimes a bit less. And anything that happens in the LULUCF sector has enormous implications for the overall figures from our country. And then when you design policy, you need a certain degree of predictability. So, I mean, when we say that we want to count what is additional, we need to be comfortable that the indicator is actually measuring what is additional and not erratic. And to be honest, the inventory figures from this sector has never stopped surprising us. It's really changing from year to year, and if you look at the figures we have presented in the BTR, you will also see that over the years it's really fluctuating a lot. I trust that this is a challenge that many countries with many trees per capita have. We have about 8, maybe 10,000 trees per capita. So it is a vital thing to have under control when we design policies. We're working hard on this. We hope that we will be able to land a good methodology by the time we submit the next BTR, which is just a few months ahead. And we will continue to be transparent about how we go about this very, very important sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the questions. First, the question from Australia was regarding Canada's governance and transparency arrangements and our reporting. So under the Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act, the Minister of the Environment, Climate Change and Nature must prepare 3 progress reports on the 2030 emission reduction plan and table them in Canada's Parliament. The first of those was published in 2023, the second in 2025, and the final report is due by the end of 2027. So the first 2 progress reports provided an update on Canada's progress towards our target of 40% to 40% below 2005 levels by 2030, as well as the interim emission reduction objective of 20% below 2005 levels by 2026. It also provided, or those 2 reports also provided an update on the implementation status of different federal measures and key cooperative agreements with provinces and territories, in addition to outlining what others are doing in Canada to advance climate action, including provinces and territories, First Nations, Inuit and Métis, and the Net Zero Advisory Body. And then lastly, the reports outline Canada's efforts to working with the international community to promote and facilitate global climate action. The 2025 progress reports also included secondary indicators for each economic sector to, where possible, track progress relevant to Canada's emission reductions, independent of historical emissions. And so they aim to capture timely insight into trends and results of climate actions across the Canadian economy and reflect the efforts of governments, civil society, business, and households to meet Canada's climate goals. Overall, the progress reports help to track Canada's progress towards its NDC by bringing together historical and projected emissions data and providing a consistent overview of the implementation, the expected impacts, and the overall contribution of federal climate measures. And then lastly on that point, I'll just say that more than 15 federal departments and agencies contribute to the preparation of these reports by providing updates on mitigation measures, reflecting the whole of government approach. And the Government of Canada also engages with provinces and territories, with national Indigenous organizations and relevant stakeholders, as well to support the completeness, transparency, and accuracy of the information that's reported on our actions and progress. And this is part of our overall commitment to transparency and accountability. On the second question from Saudi Arabia, thank you for the question. It was related to Canada's recently announced goal to deliver over $13 billion in climate-related support over the next 5 years, and how this will consider or take into account the NCQG. So, while Canada hasn't just recently announced this goal, the underlying elements of how it will be delivered are still being finalized and going through our internal approval processes in Canada. So I can say that it will be delivered through several ministries and agencies. For example, Canada's climate finance commitment includes over $3.1 billion that will be administered through Global Affairs Canada and the Environment and Climate Change Canada to support climate action in developing countries, building on Canada's previous climate finance commitments. And it also includes more than $2.7 billion in funding to FinDev Canada, which is Canada's development finance institution, to expand its concessional finance facility and mobilize private capital into climate-related businesses and projects in developing countries. And so with that funding, Canada will continue to work closely with the private sector to increase the flow of capital into low and middle-income countries and emerging markets. And I would just like to highlight here that FinDev Canada co-founded, under our previous tranche of climate finance, a blended finance platform with the Green Climate Fund and MUFG Bank Limited to accelerate climate adaptation and mitigation projects in emerging markets. And Gaia will allocate at least 70% of its capital to adaptation projects in markets most severely impacted by climate change. So in closing, as Canada finalizes the underlying details of how our new goal will be delivered, we are very much committed to delivering on the NCQG and are looking at how aspects can be mainstreamed into the support that we'll be delivering going forward, including the qualitative aspects of the NCQG, and we'll provide more detail in due course. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Canada. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for questions from the distinguished delegates from Saudi Arabia and South Korea. I'm going to answer the first question raised by Saudi Arabia, and the rest of the question will be answered by my colleague. On the CCUS, Japan has developed advanced technology for carbon capture, and to start the CCS project by 2030 and achieve net zero GHG emission by 2050, Japan has formulated the CCS long-term roadmap and enacted the CCS Business Act. For CCS, the Ministry of the Environment Japan has been conducting a demonstration project at a biomass thermal power plant, which is the largest CO2 capture facility in the thermal power plants on commercial scale in Japan. And regarding the CCU, Japan is also working on the demonstration project for the direct air capture DAC, which directly captures CO2 from the atmosphere for effective use, based on Japan's capture technologies that has been used in submarines and spacecraft, as well as a project to produce methane and ethanol, which are raw materials for fuels and chemical products using CO2 emitted from the waste incineration facilities. Japan aims to establish commercial-scale CCU technologies toward its full-scale societal implementation after 2030 through these initiatives.
And on the second question from Saudi Arabia, regarding the forecast on renewables and nuclear in the future, based on the sixth strategy energy plan in 2021, Japan's power generation mix in fiscal year 2030 is expected to expand the share of renewable energy to approximately 36 to 38%, and the nuclear to 20 to 22%. Under the outlook for energy supply and demand in fiscal year 2040, published alongside the seventh strategic energy plan, Japan's power generation mix in fiscal year 2040 is expected to expand the share of renewable energy to approximately 40 to 50%, and nuclear to approximately 20%. And let me answer to the question from South Korea. Thank you for your question on our green transformation policy. Japan promotes the pro-growth carbon pricing concept, which integrates support for advanced investment with phased carbon pricing. It will provide support for advanced investment amounting to 20 trillion Japanese yen over 10 years and aiming to achieve 150 trillion yen in public and private investment on green transformation. This support is financed by a GX Economy Transition Bond, which will be issued by Japanese government. The government has formulated sector-specific investment strategies in 16 priority areas and implements measures tailored to each sector's characteristics and stage of development. For example, in hard-to-abate industries such as steel, chemicals, pulps, and paper and cement, we support capital investment to transform energy use and production processes. In addition, through Green Innovation Fund, Japan provides continuous support for innovative technologies from research and development to demonstration and social implementation to companies and organizations committed to ambitious goals of achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. Japan also promotes demand creation for GX products by advancing visualization of their value through product carbon footprints and verifiable emission reductions, as well as through leading government procurement. The key lessons learned is to combine technology development, capital investment, and demand creation under a clear sectoral strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. Colleagues, we have about 15 minutes before we need to leave the room, so we'll take the remaining questions and then kindly ask the countries under the FMCP to provide written responses, which will then be posted to the FMCP webpage. With that, I kindly encourage the remaining questions to be limited to the most pressing ones and to remain clear and concise. With that, Netherlands, you have the floor.
Thank you, colleagues, and thank you and congratulations for the parties submitting your first BTR. I have a question for New Zealand and the UK. For New Zealand, you mentioned the phase-out of coal use in your industries for the heating processes. Could you clarify what policies are in place or planned to ensure a phase-out of the coal being used in industry? And for the UK, we know that the UK has many policies and measures in place to deliver on its NDC, and we are wondering how information on the implementation, of the progress of implementation, and also the expected impacts of policies and measures help to inform policymakers to adjust policies when needed. Thank you so much.
EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, delegates, and congratulations for all for completing your first biannual transparency report full cycle. In the interest of time, I would concentrate then only on Japan, not that I do not have an interest in all the other parties. I have submitted written questions, and thank you all for answering them. But to my Japanese colleagues, I would like to focus on their global observation satellite for greenhouse gases. I would like to know how they're using the data from GOSAT-1 and GOSAT-2 into their greenhouse gas inventory, particularly on the LULUCF side, and also looking at methane hotspots. And of course, they have launched GOSAT GW last year, so would be interested in knowing what are the updates and improvements and researches foreseen. Thank you.
Thank you, European Union. Colleagues, just a note, we will be providing a transcript of the questions to facilitate the response process. Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I have a question for New Zealand. First, congratulations to all of you for your first BTR, but especially to New Zealand. In its first BTR, New Zealand reports that its forests play an important role in its emission trading system as carbon sinks, and acknowledges the role of afforestation as a key component of emission reductions in the LULUCF sector. Aside from measures concerning afforestation, could New Zealand please clarify what measures are taken to preserve existing forests and their role as carbon sinks, and how afforestation impacts other land uses? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Germany. Poland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations to all presenting parties for their first BTR. We'd like to thank you all for the informative presentations and for your insightful statements today. I have two questions to the parties. First one is for Canada. In its first BTR, Canada reports that emissions increased in Canada between 2021 and 2022. The report explains this is due to a reversal of the LULUCF sink in 2022 due to a drought in the Canadian prairies impacting the carbon input from cropland. And could Canada elaborate on how this trend has evolved since 2022 and how it might impact emissions reductions for the 2030 NDC target? And another question is for Japan. In its updated NDC, in addition to its economy-wide single-year target of 46% GHG reduction by 2030 from a 2013 baseline, Japan includes a statement that it will continue strenuous efforts in its challenge to meet the lofty goal of cutting its emissions by 50% from the same baseline. Poland understands from the Japan's BTR that no additional pumps beyond Japan's existing plan for global warming countermeasures are being explored, and that Japan's own with measures scenario projections present a 46% reduction achievement by 2030. And could Japan please share any updated information in its efforts it is making to achieving its more ambitious stated goal of 50% GHG reduction by 2030? Thank you.
Thank you. Samoa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and congratulations to all the parties for the notable initiatives towards climate action and transparency. My question is for the UK. We're interested in data sharing relationships for our reporting obligations. You emphasized the role of partnerships between government, the private sector, and civil society in supporting climate action and transparency. Could you share which mechanisms have been most effective for coordinating data collection and reporting across these stakeholders? Additionally, what challenges have you encountered with data sharing arrangements, and what lessons have emerged from those experiences? Thank you.
Thank you, Samoa. I'll kindly ask the other parties to be as brief as possible, as we only have a few minutes left. Ireland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations to all parties on your first BTR submissions. My question is for Japan. So a number of GHG inventory improvements are recommended in Japan's first technical expert review report, and this includes 6 recommendations for the LULUCF sector, of which 2 may directly relate to issues with accuracy. Can Japan please outline what efforts are in place to ensure the ongoing improvement of its reporting in its next BTR, with a focus on making technical improvements to its LULUCF inventory, noting that Japan's unconditional 2030 NDC target is inclusive of LULUCF emissions? Thank you.
Thank you. Shizekia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations to all presenting parties for the BTR. And I have 2 questions, first for Canada. In December 2023, Canada proposed amendments to strengthen the existing oil and gas methane regulation by increasing the stringency of the requirements and expanding the scope of application. Could Canada provide more details on the implementation status of these measurements and their scope? And also, please share your experience and challenges you have encountered. And the second question is for Norway. What action are Norway taking in regard to the global methane pledge? Thank you.
Malawi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair, for giving us this floor. I would like to also congratulate Canada, Japan, Norway, New Zealand, and the UK for this remarkable work they have done and for undergoing this process. So I have two questions. One is to all the 5 parties. The other one is for the UK. The first one to all the parties is that we have noted that indeed you have provided support to the developing countries in implementing the Convention and the Paris Agreement, and you have also made huge commitments. So my question is, how does the 5 parties intend to ensure that the new international climate finance commitment delivers the core under the first global stocktake for scaled, predictable, and accessible finance, which is balancing mitigation and adaptation, and also responding to the emerging needs related to loss and damage, as well as reporting under the Article 13, particularly for the vulnerable developing countries, including the LDCs. The last one for the UK is we really appreciate for the ambitious targets, including 68% emission reduction by 2030 and 81% by 2035 compared to 1990 levels. Could the UK elaborate on the key sectors expected to deliver the remaining emission reductions required to achieve these targets, and any challenges anticipated in the implementation? Thank you.
Malaysia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I would like to record my congratulations to Canada, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, and the UK on your success in the submissions of your BTR report and various climate action as highlighted in your remarks. My question is addressed to Japan. What are the main factors behind the recent decline in greenhouse gas emissions as reported in your BTR, and do you expect this downward trend to continue in the future? Thank you.
Ireland? No. Apologies, UK.
Thank you very much. And we would like to congratulate Japan on the submission of their first BTR, and would like it if they could share their experience of using the Article 6 market mechanism and some of the successes and challenges that they faced in using it. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues, for the questions. I would like to extend my thanks and congratulate you all for actively engaging in this very fruitful and positive discussion. Please join me in giving the parties a round of applause on the FMCP. I would now like to suspend the session and resume this afternoon. The session is adjourned. But before we break, I would also like to highlight that the first FMCP dialogue will take place immediately after this session. I'll quickly pass to the Secretariat to update.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so we will have the informal FMCP dialogue starting right after the session at 1 p.m. It's in the club lounge. It's just above this room here. We can all go together. We'll be showing you the way, and we have a setup that all parties under FMCP will be guided to their table, and everyone else is invited to join. And everything else will be explained there once we are there. There will be some rotation, moving from table to table. We'll have tea and coffee, we'll have some nibbles, and there will be some open mingling at the end, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.